Hello, everybody. My name is Neff, and I currently serve as the Educator Growth Lead here at Screencastify in Chicago. That means that I get to spend my days serving our incredible community of educators. I'm so excited to talk a little bit today about what it's like to have our kids demonstrate their understanding and express themselves regardless of where they are, whether that's at home, at school, or even a combination of the two. While our students not being with us face to face makes it hard to foster authentic engagement and demonstration, I also think it's worth being made clear that these challenges existed before COVID-19, and they very likely will exist after its extinction. Hearing from every student in a meaningful way requires creative solutions, and I'm hoping that we can talk about some ways that we can foster authentic student expression and demonstrable learning today during our 40 minutes together. If you're somebody who really likes to follow along, then you can check out the presentation at this link, bit.ly/submit prepared to learn. There will be a couple of links to follow as we move through our journey with Submit today. So if you'd like, go ahead and join the Google Slides presentation and follow along. Before we get into the meat of this, I just want to define some of the challenges we face when we don't center demonstrable learning and student expression. We might see that students are able to usurp both our formative and summative assessments. The question I think we ought to ask ourselves is not how do we prevent cheating, but how do we create assessments and learning experiences that make cheating impossible? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We also have other huge questions to answer. How do we create opportunities for our students to grow socially and emotionally? In the middle of a pandemic and historic racial unrest, it's more important than ever that we teach the whole child. And social emotional learning becomes a huge proponent of why we developed our newest product, Screencastify Submit. And then we have to wonder, how do we provide a platform for our kiddos to show their thinking, to explain the incredible projects and assignments they've created in an environment that they themselves deem safe, when so much around them is categorical of unsafe environments? And finally, what does student voice look like and sound like when students aren't in the same physical space as us, their teachers, or as their peers who they've created a learning environment around? These are incredibly large questions, and our team here at Screencastify has been working hard to create a tool that might help you be able to interact with your students and find solutions to some of these questions that have plagued us since March. When I talk about Screencastify Submit, I always like to tell the story of the birth because I think it's a little bit unconventional. It all started with me and this guy, Nate, who was in our district partnerships team, visiting a school just a little bit outside Chicago in Hanover, Indiana. And what we did was we watched a group of third grade students take in a lesson about digital literacy. And unfortunately, what we found was that they actually struggled to create a simple video. So it was clear to us on the ride back home that the process was too complicated. It was too long. And as a team, we can make it dramatically better. So we created this solution that we like to call Screencastify Submit that allows students to create videos without any of the traditional hassles. So think no need for student accounts where they have to type in tons of information that might seem unsafe. There are no applications, even if students are logging in on their cell phones, which many of them are in this remote learning environment. And there are no extensions that students may need to download and face errors in being a part of. So at this point in the presentation, you might be asking yourself, how does Submit work? What does it even look like for students to be able to create videos without the use of apps or extensions? So Submit works in a pretty straightforward way, which we like to think is emblematic of every product that we create here at Screencastify. As an educator, you start by choosing what you would like your students to record. If you want them to showcase their voices in a webcam recording and also showcase their faces, that's an option. This is perfect for things like reading fluency or having students record a quick reflection of what they've learned the past week in remote learning, or perhaps even what they've learned in their traditional brick and mortar classroom. But if you'd like students to demonstrate what's on their screen in a screen recording, we have that option too. That's awesome. If you'd like your students to create their own Google Slides presentation, which from the last presentation we know is absolutely the Swiss Army knife when it comes to the G Suite. Or perhaps you want students to go through what they're able to do on a Google Docs. That's all possible with their screen recording. Everything from a Google Slides presentation to a tour on Google Earth, it becomes possible with Screencastify Submit and whatever tool you'd like to layer on top of it. The next part of it is creating a title for your assignment. And this title is really cool because that's what we use to create a folder in your Google Drive. Yep, every video that your students create is going to be saved to your Google Drive as the teacher. And of course, you can also add instructions so your students know exactly what they should do. This is awesome because when your students get to the actual screen, what they're seeing is the title and the instructions. Everything else is stripped down to make sure that they can focus on only what matters. You'll also get an opportunity to configure a few settings. The first question you answer is who should have access to the assignment. You can lock it by choosing just one domain, meaning your school domain, and anybody outside of your domain would be unable to actually complete the assignment. Or if you'd like to open up the assignment to parents or anybody in your school community, you can make the assignment open to anyone who has the link. The option is truly yours to make this assignment as secure or as open as you'd like to make sure that you capture maximum student engagement and community engagement. You can also customize the video privacy settings. If you're creating an assignment where students should not have access to their videos after completion, we've got a setting for that. We know that tons of folks like to use that setting specifically for video assessments. It means that students won't even be able to access the video that they created after they've submitted it to you. Or if you want to have a private conversation with the student that you do want them to be able to revisit, we have a setting for that as well. This is perfect for those asynchronous conversations that might center SEL, a student's growth, or even an assignment conversation that should be accessible by you and the student, but certainly should not be accessible by every student in your classroom. But if you do want to create a social learning environment, we also have a setting that fosters asynchronous class discussion. That allows students to view videos created by their classmates as well as videos created by them at any time because it's all shared to Google Drive. And that's it. Once you've created an assignment title and assignment settings, your assignment is live. On our end, we've generated a magic link that your students can use to access the assignment and record their videos. So you might be wondering, what do students see when they log into Screencastify Submit? The answer is that they see only what you want them to see. Absolutely no distractions. It truly is click and record. Once they've recorded their video, it'll automatically be saved to your Google Drive. By the way, we know that mastery is not a straight line from point A to point B. So students can record as many videos as they'd like until you decide to close the assignment. So how is Submit actually used in a classroom? To find out, we had 40,000 different beta testers use Submit and let us know how we can improve the product and how they use it in their classroom. And what we found is that Submit is actually quite ubiquitous. If you can think of a way for students to express themselves, for them to demonstrate their learning, it can occur through Submit. And it probably already has occurred through Submit in the last 4 months that students have been using this tool in a remote learning environment. But there are two specific use cases for Submit that we find to be incredibly powerful. The first one is robust demonstrations of learning. I was a teacher. I taught 8th grade civics, 8th grade language arts, and 11th grade African American literature. One of the things that always came to mind was that it was impossible to get inside my students' head. What are they thinking? Why are they thinking that? And unfortunately, there was no really good way to do that. So I ended up with assignments that might look similar to what you're about to see. As a math teacher, you might see a student tell you that x equals 2, but with no explanation how they actually solved the equation. While we know the answer is right, we don't know how students got to this understanding and how we might be able to coach them to make sure that they always arrive at the right answer. But enter a Screencastify Submit assignment that might ask students to show their work, but not actually show their work alone, but also let us into their head as they work through it. What are you thinking? How do you decide to get rid of certain things on each side of the equation? And suddenly, we're allowed to see everything that a student is thinking instead of just their final answer. This might look similar in an English classroom, where I often ask my students to find a theme of a particular passage, and they told me exactly what they thought the theme might be, but with no text evidence, no understanding of what they were thinking. And then we might be able to turn that into a submit assignment, asking students to use their webcam to record just a couple of minutes to show what they believe the theme to be and the actual parts of the passage that they derived to be able to arrive at that theme. Suddenly, we have student understanding and student voice infused in an assignment that was just one sentence long, but now becomes a robust demonstration of student learning. But this becomes even more clear when we think about learning a foreign language, especially in a remote learning environment. We can have our students type as much as we want, but that doesn't give us an accurate depiction of whether or not our students can actually speak the language. But fortunately, turning that into a submit assignment allows us to hear them, just as if they were in the same room as us. So asking them to translate their name from English to Spanish becomes not only what they can write, but also what they can speak as well. So really quickly, I would love for you to think about your kids in your curriculum. How can you use Submit to have your students demonstrate learning? There's a bit.ly there, bit.ly/demonstrable learning. Go ahead and log on, add what you would use to have your kids create robust demonstrations of learning, and we'll share out a few so that we can all learn from each other. I'll give just a couple of minutes to make sure that we're all there, or a couple of seconds rather. We got one person saying that they can use Submit for reading fluency passages. Yes, reading fluency is so important at any age. Explaining how to graph a rational function if you're a math teacher, an oral reading sample, book reviews and discussions, having kids teach their peers, which is so incredible and often happens in the traditional classroom. But this is something that can happen in a remote learning environment as well. Work out math problems and explain their reasoning. I think it's quite clear that regardless of how you decide to use Submit, there are tons of ways that this can be applicable throughout different subjects, throughout different age groups, for students to be able to authentically share what they're thinking and how they're thinking about the assignments that you've created. The other way that we like to think about folks using Submit is authentic student expression. I think when we talk about students expressing themselves, there are a couple of things that come to mind for me as a teacher. And these things come to mind regardless of whether the classroom is remote or whether we're meeting in a traditional brick and mortar class. So one thing is, how do I hear from every student? I know that I often had upwards of 30 to 40 kids in one classroom. And unfortunately, with limited time in a class period, it was impossible to be able to hear from all 35 of them in a way that allowed them to deeply express their thoughts. How do I foster safe classroom discussions? So whether it is students being able to feel comfortable in a classroom discussion, them feeling like their ideas are heard and accepted, this is something that as educators, we often think about quite a lot. And of course, how do I create opportunities for students to share their voice on demand? In a remote learning environment, we hope that every student is able to meet synchronously through solutions like Google Meet or whatever it is that you're using to get all of your kids together. But the reality of the situation is that not all of our students will be able to make it. So how do we create opportunities for folks to be able to share their ideas on demand at times that work for them, when they have access to a device or when they've been able to formulate their thinking around a complex subject and they feel comfortable sharing it? And Submit kind of works to do all of those things. Initially, the first thing that we started with is, how do we hear from every student? And the answer is quite simple. First, assignments remain active forever unless you'd like to actually close them. That's pretty cool because it means that one student might be able to respond on Monday, while another student might not be able to respond until Friday, but they all are a part of the same conversation and all are able to learn and grow together. The other thing is that we have changed assignment access options to make students feel more comfortable. Part of what makes students, at least in brick and mortar classrooms, unwilling and unable to raise their hands is that they feel like they might be judged or they don't have a safe environment. But Submit allows you to at least allow students to start by speaking directly to you. And that often has been a game changer for the 40,000 people who use Submit during its beta. Telling students that the only people who are able to access the video are the student themselves and the teacher, and then working them up to those social learning environments where their peers can access the videos just as they can. And then finally, we also have a record extension, which many of you guys have used to create instructional videos, which allows teachers to demonstrate how to create a video and allow students to get a little bit more loosened up, seeing one of their favorite teachers engage in video in the same way that they can. We also have thought a lot about ways to foster safe classroom discussion, particularly in a remote learning environment. So for educators, it means that you decide who can join the discussion. Remember, you can always lock the discussion down to specific domains or allow it to be opened up to everybody. But particularly that domain access option means that only the people who share your email domain are able to participate, locking it down from anybody who might mean harm to your students. You also get to decide who can view the videos. So whether you'd like videos to be viewed by anyone to share videos with parents and members of your immediate community, or if you'd like those videos to be locked to only be a part of your class, that is possible with Submit. And finally, you can turn access to the Google Drive folder on and off at will. So if you'd like students to have access now, but not in 2 hours from now, that's totally fine. Those sharing options are completely customizable at any time to make sure that classroom discussion is always as safe as possible and customizable to what your students want and need in order to be able to engage in classroom discussion. We also love the idea of student expression being on demand. They can enter and share their thinking at any time that they want, whether that be sharing their webcam when they're comfortable because other members of their household are no longer visible, or if it's sharing their thinking when they've finally been able to master that complex concept that you taught over Google Meet this morning. We give students the opportunity to really be able to hone in and think through how they share their voice, when they share their voice, in order to make sure that the expression that they ultimately share is something that is amazing for them and a true demonstration of their learning. Submit is awesome, and I think that it allows students to express themselves. I'd love for us to head back to Google Forms really quickly to share a couple of ideas about how you might allow your students to express themselves. That link is bit.ly/submit-in-students. And again, I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to share your thoughts, and then I'll read a couple aloud so that you can see some of the ideas that your fellow educators have come up with. And again, the link is bit.ly/submit-in-students. First response, using it to learn sign language. Oh my God, that is amazing and so important. So thank you for that response. Project assignment reflection. If you're looking for a way for students to be able to share what they thought about longer projects that they've created, Submit to the rescue to show that expression. Providing feedback on something that's not working for them. We're all kind of building the plane as we fly it here in this remote learning environment. And I know that some of the teachers who I have spoken to have found that the most important thing that they can do is to ask for frequent feedback from their kiddos. And this is a great way to be able to do that. Create an assignment, ask them what they think about the last couple of weeks of instruction, and get their authentic feedback. Of course, beginning of the year icebreakers and check-ins to see who your students are, what they love, how they learn best, music compositions for my band teachers, my chorus teachers, a way for teachers to be able to introduce themselves, a way for you to be able to assess where your students are feeling and how you might be able to plug in. It really is quite a bit that you would be able to do with Submit and make sure that you understand where your students are actually at. So I know that I've been talking for a bit, but one of the things that I love about professional development is the opportunity to actually try something that I just learned about. And I feel like if I can't try it, then it's not as tangible as I would like. So I've created a submit assignment for us all to take part in, and it is bit.ly/try submit. So if you go to bit.ly/try submit, you actually can create your own video. And I'm going to change what I'm showing on screen and actually show you what the assignment dashboard looks like so that you can see what it looks like from the educator perspective, which I am so excited about. So if you head to bit.ly/try submit, you'll be able to see what it looks like from the student perspective. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like from the teacher perspective. All right, guys, welcome to my submit dashboard. And this is the assignment that I just shared with you. Hello, prepared to learn. And you'll see we actually have some submissions there. And that submission is actually going to take me to Google Drive, where I will be able to see all of the videos as they come in. So thank you so much to our first couple of people. You see that submission count keeps coming up and up. And I've actually shared this assignment so that anybody can go ahead and look at some of those videos. So if you go ahead and say hello, you'll be able to see that assignment link to the Google Drive folder once you have completed your own video. So be sure to let us know who you are, where you're from, and how you plan to use Screencastify Submit. When you actually get on to Submit, it'll look a little bit like what you guys saw before. So you will see just that assignment link as well as the assignment description. So we already have 19 submissions. It is going crazy here for you guys actually being able to introduce yourself. And I think that is quite clear how this would be pretty useful for the classroom because you would be able to see everything that your students are doing and be able to see a little bit about what's happening. So I want to make sure that you guys can see the dashboard here. So this dashboard, again, has all of your assignments, their status. So open assignments are things that actually can be put a part of, as well as the number of submissions. So you should see the submission count going up and up. And if you can't see that, please let me know. But you will see that submission count going up and up as folks actually are able to share those submissions. All right. So, of course, feel free to continue to go ahead and share things as you would like. I would love for that to be open and you'll have access to that for quite some time. So if you decide to share who you are and share a little bit about how you're using Submit over the next couple of days, couple of weeks, if you're watching this as a recording, that is totally fine. This is an awesome way, as you can see, for you to be able to introduce folks to each other, similar to what we have done here. So I also do want to preview a few other ways that you can learn about Submit. So as I mentioned, this is a brand new product that we launched in March, and it became quite clear as we thought about remote learning that the small beta that we initially conceptualized just was not going to be good enough. And we needed to make sure that there was a way for this to be public to everyone. So 40,000 people joined our beta, and we're looking forward to publicly launching Submit a little bit later in August, where we will have both a free and paid version of Submit. So I know that that was one of the questions that I saw in the chat. Can you access this free? The answer is absolutely. All of our products can have a free version that can be accessed by educators and by your students. So that is definitely something that we are looking forward to. But since Submit is so brand new, we want to make sure that we give ample opportunities for folks to be able to learn a little bit more about what Submit is, how it works, and how you might be able to use it uniquely with your students. So before we get to a question and answer period, I also want to preview just a couple of ways in which you would be able to plug in and learn more about Screencastify Submit. Initially, of course, we are on Twitter, so feel free to follow our Screencastify team at Screencastify and me personally at NiftyNeff. We also have upcoming in-depth webinars to find a in-depth look at Submit. You can follow those at bit.ly/Screencastify webinar. And you can get started with Submit even right now at app.screencastify.com/submit. There is where you will be able to find your own dashboard where you can create your own assignments and be able to immediately share those with colleagues in order to get an idea of what it looks like, but then also start to share with students. I know some of you guys might have started school already, so this will be an awesome opportunity to be able to engage your students. But if you have not started school already, this is another opportunity for you to add to your teacher tool belt to be used in a week or so when you actually do begin to engage students either virtually or in person. I think that's what makes Submit awesome, is that it is something that truly can be used regardless of where your school setting actually lives, but allow you to kind of communicate with your students. So I want to allow ample time for some questions, and I know that quite a few have been rolling in here. So I am going to take a look at some of those questions as well. So the first question that we got was, is Submit free? And I do want to harp on that one because I am so proud that we are a company that prioritizes making sure that there is a permanent access to a version of our products that is free. So yes, there is a version of Submit that is free, and that is something that will continue to exist. Karen also said, does Submit work on iPads? The answer is yes. Webcam assignments work on iPads, which is a change that we made as a part of the beta that I'm really excited about. David's question is, please address privacy issues. David, I love that question because privacy is something that we have prioritized. A couple of things are pretty important here. The first is that here at Screencastify, we don't own or store any of the videos that are created by your students. So that means that we never, ever have access to what students have created, which makes this one of the most private ways that students can actually communicate. The other thing that you should keep in mind is that we never create student accounts. Students actually sign on with their Google accounts. So it is basically the same as them logging on to Classroom or other things of that nature, which we also do not store. So there are quite a few ways that we have worked to safeguard privacy and security. We would love to answer any of those questions if there are more in-depth or more specific questions, but privacy is something that we take incredibly seriously. And especially with Submit, since it is a student-facing tool, we want to make sure that this is one of the most private, most secure, easiest ways for your students to be able to share their unique voice and their unique ideas. So another question from Susan, can Submit be linked to other LMSs like OnCourse? The answer is yes. The beauty in Submit is that it generates a magic link that you can copy and paste anywhere. So we have a native functionality that will allow you to share that link to Google Classroom. But if you are using any other LMS, it is as easy as copying that link and pasting it anywhere that you would like, which is awesome. Melissa says, how can you listen to 100 video responses efficiently? Here's what we would say. The big trick to it is being able to create an actual time limit on where students are doing and a target. So in most of the assignments that I create, I tell students you should create a 2-minute video, you should create a 5-minute video, so that I can kind of limit how long these videos actually are. The other thing that we've had from students, or from educators, excuse me, using Submit is a couple of best practices. The first is for a lot of secondary teachers who might have upwards of 150 or 200 students. It might look like having one period create an assignment on one day and having another period create an assignment on the second day to kind of break up how many videos you're receiving at the same time. It also might mean that you watch videos at different lengths. So creating kind of a schedule for yourself of when you're going to watch videos. But there are quite a few ways that you can do it. Similar to as an English teacher trying to figure out how I was going to read 150 essays, I just kind of had to figure out a few tips and tricks and try to get that done. And then Corrine says, do students need to download Screencastify individually? The answer is absolutely not at all. That is the beauty of Submit, that students don't need to download anything whatsoever. They literally just click the link and they're able to record, which means that they're doing that if they would like on a mobile device. They're able to do that on an iPad. They're able to do that on a computer, but they never will need to download any sort of app, any sort of extension, or do anything special to be able to access Submit, which makes it particularly cool. So Nicole's question is, how does this work with Canvas? So with Canvas, it would be copying that link and then putting it into a Canvas assignment. Those videos would still go to your Google Drive, and students will be able to access Screencastify Submit specifically in order to watch the videos that their classmates have created. So again, that's the beauty of Submit. You can copy that link and paste it anywhere you would like in order to engage your students. And then go ahead and keeping those questions coming. I would love to answer any questions that you have about Screencastify Submit. Rosemary's question is, can the mic be turned off? I teach ASL and do not want background sound. Rosemary, awesome question. The answer is yes, you can go ahead and turn that mic off. If your students are using an external mic, they can turn it off at the base. And then they can also do that within Submit to turn that microphone off, specifically for screen recordings, to do that as well. The other way to do that, if a student just did not realize how to turn off their mic with their system settings, the other way to be able to do that would be you as an educator being able to just turn off your speaker so that you kind of don't hear some of that background noise that students are seeing. Hey, really good question, Ms. Cortez. The answer is yes. We have seen this used by students as young as 4 and 5 in pre-K settings. The really awesome thing is that Submit is literally click and record. So if they can click that blue button that says record, then they are off to the races. So I think this is an awesome tool to be used with our kinders or some of our younger students to be able to share their voices. So yeah, that is awesome. The other thing that we have seen is a lot of these kinders are being able to access educational technology tools with the assistance of their parents. So if you're able to create a quick screen recording, perhaps with our extension, that shows folks how they access Submit, that can go a long way to showing parents exactly how they record. But it is very, very straightforward. And that's something that we thought about quite a bit, down to having our product manager's daughter being able to test some of these things to make sure that they were very, very friendly for kids of any age to be able to engage. Daryl, good question. So similar to Canvas or any LMS that you might be using, it is as simple as copying that link and then being able to paste it to wherever students will be able to access, which is the ubiquity of Submit. Paste it anywhere and students are able to actually access that. Hey, Karen, really good question. If you already have Screencastify, woo woo. First of all, thank you so much for using Screencastify. But secondly, activating Submit is as simple as accessing the dashboard. And remember, you can always access the dashboard by going to that link there, app.screencastify.com/submit. So if you did not get a chance to see that in the previous slide, please make sure that you access Submit there. You can always get started at app.screencastify.com/submit. Hey, Sasha, really good question. So if students are using any sort of web app or something of that nature that creates virtual backgrounds that would be picked up by Submit, there is no native functionality that would allow them to insert virtual backgrounds. But if they are using an app on top of something to create those virtual backgrounds, that totally would show up in Submit. So I hope that answers the question there. Hey, Daniel, so does Submit Unlimited come with Screencastify Unlimited? So those actually are two separate products. We have Record Unlimited, and then we also have Submit Unlimited. And you can learn a little bit more about what that entails, what it looks like by going to app.screencastify.com/submit. You also will be super jacked to know that we have a free version of all of our products, which means that if you are a Record Unlimited free user, you can also use any of our other products for free, or of course, take us up on one of those upgrades. But of course, we have a free version of all of those, but do want to make clear that those are two separate products, which often fulfill two different use cases. Thank you, Daniel, for that question. Keep them coming. Awesome question. Does it allow create files to organize and store student videos? Yes, that is the cool thing about Submit. We do all of the organization for you. So upon signing up for Screencastify Submit, we'll create a folder in your Google Drive called Screencastify Submit. And then every time you create an assignment, we're going to go ahead and create a brand new folder with the title of that assignment. And the only videos that will go into that subfolder will be the ones that are directly in conversation with that video. So imagine if you had period 1 band recital, period 2 band recital, period 3 band recital, and shared that link. That means that you would have 3 different folders that would be organized without you having to do a thing. So not only is Submit an easy way for students to be able to share their voice, it also allows for a great deal of organization that we are doing on our part that you do not have to worry about, which takes one more thing off your plate. Hey, Missy, really good question. How do we decide which to use, record or submit? My answer is that usually we see a lot of teachers having amazing use of record as a teacher-facing tool that is awesome for creating instructional videos. But if you'd like your students to be able to share their voice in a really easy way, we recommend Submit because that is so easy for students to be able to use. They don't have to download our extension. They don't have to do anything special. They just create that quick, they just click on that link. And when they use Submit, it means that the videos are going to be saved to your Google Drive. Whereas with the record extension, those videos will be saved to their Google Drive. So really it's a case-by-case basis, but usually if we had to get simplistic about it, we think that record is great for teachers to create their videos. We think that Submit is great for students to be able to create their own videos. Really good question, Molly. So they get to record as many videos as they'd like. All of those videos would be saved to your Google Drive, which we think is actually an asset because it allows you to see the evolution of a student's thought process. So for example, as an English teacher, I often would have my students record their thoughts on what it might mean to create an effective thesis statement. And take 1 might be not so great because it doesn't include all of the elements, but by take 3, I'm able to see that a student really understands what a thesis statement means and how it can be employed in a research paper. So being able to see all 3 of those iterations of the video makes me see how my students have changed in their thought and how they have grown in their understanding. So you will get all of those videos. You can, of course, choose to ignore and only use the best one, which will be timestamped. Or you can go ahead on a journey of student thinking and see exactly how your students' thinking has changed and evolved with all of the videos that they've been able to create. And I think we have time for maybe about 1 or 2 more questions if there are still folks here who have a question about what Submit might look like or how they might be able to use it. So if Lisa says, I can get my camera to switch to front in the app, but I can't for the try Submit. So if you are using a mobile device, you should be able to go ahead and switch that. But we are always here to serve you and help you out. So if that is quite not working for you, please send us an email at support@screencastify.com. We love to learn a little bit more about what's going wrong and make sure that we can go ahead and do that. All right, guys, I think we are at about our time for this presentation, and we want to make sure that we give you guys some time to eat lunch and get ready for the next presentation that is going to be absolutely awesome. Thank you for joining me. Again, my name is Nefertiti Dukes. I serve as the Educator Growth Lead at Screencastify. It has been absolutely amazing to be able to talk a little bit about Screencastify Submit and some of the ways in which you might be able to use it to create demonstrable student learning and, of course, student expression. I do want to call attention one last time to this last slide where you can follow the Screencastify squad, sign up for an in-depth webinar, or get started at the actual Submit dashboard, which is app.screencastify.com/submit. If you have any questions whatsoever or would like to hear a little bit more about Screencastify Submit, we cannot wait to hear from you. Again, thank you for joining us for this session. Thank you for joining Prepared to Learn, and we'll see you a little bit later. Bye.